At 2:47 a.m., in the quiet sprawl of Willow Creek, Oregon, I jolted awake to the sound of my front door rattling like someone was trying to tear it down. The first thud could have been a dream, but the second hit hard enough to shake the family photos on my living room wall. By the third, my two Rottweilers and a scrappy terrier mix were already charging down the hall, claws skittering on the hardwood, barking with a ferocity that could wake the dead. I barely had time to pull on a hoodie before I stumbled to the door, heart pounding, ready for anything except what I saw through the glass pane. There, in the dim glow of a streetlight, stood Linda, the HOA president, in neon green pajamas, hair a wild mess, her face twisted with a fury that seemed personal. I cracked the door, keeping the chain lock on, partly for safety, partly to watch her squirm as my dogs snapped at the gap. She was yelling about a violation, something about my car parked wrong in my own driveway. I peeked past her and saw my SUV, neatly tucked where it always was, not blocking a thing except maybe her sleep schedule. Linda jabbed a finger at my vehicle, insisting it was illegally parked, as if the middle of the night was the perfect time for this debate. My dogs growled louder, and I told her, as calmly as I could muster, that we could talk when the sun was up, unless she had an actual emergency. She didn't. Instead, she tried to wedge her slipper in the door, which only made the dogs go wilder, forcing her to stumble back to the porch's edge. From there, she launched into a rant about community standards and property values, but her voice wavered every time my Rottweilers lunged. I shut the door mid-sentence, curious if she'd dare escalate from the sidewalk. Through the blinds, I saw her whip out her phone, snapping pictures of my driveway like she was on a stakeout. I figured that was it for the night, but 20 minutes later, the dogs went off again. This time, Linda was back, sweeping a flashlight across my lawn like she was hunting for clues in a crime scene. I stepped outside, dogs at my heels, and asked if she was lost or just filming a low-budget thriller. She waved a neon yellow paper, claiming it was an urgent HOA notice. I didn't take it partly because it looked like it was printed at a 24-hour copy shop, and partly because I wasn't buying her 3 a.m. power trip. I told her to save it for a judge, since she was trespassing. Her eyes narrowed, but she backed off, muttering about calling the cops. I invited her to do it, offering to brew coffee for the deputy when he arrived. She stormed off, flashlight beam jerking wildly, clearly too mad to walk straight. By 4:05 a.m. On June 12, 2024, I heard gravel crunching outside. From my window, I caught Linda's car creeping up my driveway, headlights off like she was on a covert mission. I stepped out just as she aimed her phone at my porch, probably trying to catch my solar lights breaking some obscure rule. She froze when she saw me, but instead of retreating, she doubled down, shouting that my lights violated a new HOA brightness policy. I pointed out they'd been up for 3 years without a peep, but she claimed the rules had changed overnight. I told her to put it in writing during normal hours and reminded her she was trespassing again. When she laughed and said HOA board members could inspect properties anytime, I asked for the exact rule. She hesitated, and I dialed the sheriff's non-emergency line. That shook her enough to send her scrambling back to her car, tossing out a vague threat about bigger consequences as she peeled out. The next morning, I woke to my dogs barking at 6:45 a.m. My SUV was still in the driveway, but now it sported a glaring red sticker. HOA violation, subject to towing. The fine print cited non-compliance with vehicle placement guidelines, which was nonsense. I ripped it off, glancing down the street to see Linda standing in her yard, clutching a clipboard like it was her lifeline, staring at me with a smirk that screamed victory. I gave her a slow wave, then went inside to brew coffee. But before it could even perk, my phone rang a county official informing me of a complaint about my SUV blocking the sidewalk. My driveway doesn't even touch the sidewalk. There's a foot of grass between them. The officer sounded tired, like he'd dealt with Linda before, and promised a quick inspection. By 8:30, a county truck pulled up. The inspector took one look at my driveway, snapped a photo, and confirmed there was no issue. He leaned in and said Linda had filed 7 complaints against neighbors in the past month, all dismissed. Around 10 o'clock, Linda marched up my driveway again, this time with 2 HOA board members trailing her like reluctant soldiers. They looked miserable as she slapped a letter on my porch railing, declaring a $300 fine for vehicle obstruction. I asked for the meeting minutes proving the vote, knowing HOA rules require transparency. She claimed they were confidential, which is flat out illegal. One board member muttered about work and bailed, the other followed. Linda stayed, warning me she'd be watching my property until I complied. I told her I'd be watching her too, from a courtroom if she kept this up. She huffed off in bright purple leggings that somehow made the moment weirder. By noon, I came home to find a tow truck idling in front of my house. The driver looked confused as Linda hovered, pointing at her clipboard. I explained the HOA had no authority to tow from private property without a court order. He handed me the work order signed only by Linda and drove off, ignoring her shouts about reporting him. She turned her phone on me, snapping photos of everything from my mailbox to my front door. I ignored her and checked my cameras later. She'd lingered for 20 minutes, pacing my property line like a predator circling prey. That evening, my neighbor Sam texted me a blurry photo of Linda in her garage, setting up a projector for what looked like an HOA meeting. He said she was calling me a threat to the community. I decided it was time to fight back. I compiled a PDF with the sheriff's report, HOA bylaws, and camera stills of Linda's trespassing antics, then emailed it anonymously to a few neighbors. Within minutes, the neighborhood group chat exploded with questions about her tactics. Linda went silent, and I slept like a baby, knowing she was rattled. The next day, a neon blue notice appeared on my door, threatening HOA-initiated property access if I didn't fix vague violations within 48 hours. I called the sheriff to log the threat, and my lawyer, who laughed and said to let her try it'd cost her more than me. By noon, Linda rolled up with a pickup truck loaded with yard tools and 2 board members. She announced they were here to correct my lawn's aesthetic violations. I blocked their path, dogs barking like a SWAT team, and asked for the bylaw allowing this. She fumbled, and right on cue, a deputy pulled up. He told her she had no right to enter my property and could face trespassing charges. She left, tires squealing, her crew trailing behind. That night, Sam texted again. Linda was hosting another garage meeting, this time with a slideshow of my property. I decided to up the ante. At the HOA's general meeting on June 14, 2024, the clubhouse was packed. Word of my evidence had spread. Linda opened with a lecture on chronic violators, but when the floor opened, I plugged in a USB stick and played a video. Linda taping notices at night, measuring my lawn, peering into my windows, calling a tow truck all time-stamped with sheriff's reports. The room went from murmurs to laughter as her authority crumbled. She claimed I'd edited the footage, but no one bought it. A neighbor, a retired lawyer, stood and proposed a special election to oust her as president. The motion passed, and Linda left without a word, her blazer no shield against the room's shifted mood. Over the next weeks, the neighborhood buzzed. Neighbors swapped stories, shared bylaws, and planned for the election. When the vote came, Linda lost in a landslide. The new president nullified her fines, and the crowd clapped, some grinning at me. I stayed quiet, letting the momentum carry itself. Linda's reign was over, but I knew she'd never admit defeat. So what do you think? Was I too harsh in exposing Linda publicly, or did she deserve it for her relentless harassment? Should HOAs have the power to enforce rules this aggressively, or are they just breeding grounds for petty tyrants? Drop your thoughts below, hit that like button if your team, park where you want, and subscribe for more stories of standing up to the Karens of the world.